excited to introduce Weiss. He is a mayor of the city of Avondale. He first started his public service in terms of being a council member in 2006. He became mayor in 2014 and has been re-elected since then. We're thrilled to have him as the chair of our MAG Regional Council, the Maricopa Association of Governments, and he's providing great leadership in this space. And we're just thrilled to have him join us. Mayor Weiss, the floor is yours.
Amy, thank you for that. I'm really excited about this webinar. When I was asked to kind of say some things a couple of weeks ago, it really did strike home. I think that what we're trying to accomplish as a region is incredibly important. And Amy's heard this story before. I have two daughters, Lauren and Delaney, and Lauren's going to be 28 years old, works in IT, makes good money, but has gotten priced out of the home ownership market and is getting priced out of the rental market and may soon have to move back home. And Lauren is not alone in that story. It touches all parts of the valley. We see it in Avondale all the time. Avondale is an incredibly young community. The median age of our residents is under the age of 34, and we see families struggle all the time trying to balance the pressures of whether to put food on the table and have stable housing and getting back and forth to work and groceries and everything else. So what we're doing here today is incredibly important. And when I talk to the West Valley mayors, and the West Valley mayors get together once a month for dinner, we get along great. We talk to each other throughout the month on a myriad of issues. But one thing that always comes to the surface is how do we provide more affordable and workforce housing to not only our residents, but the people who want to live in our communities. And we see increasing mortgage rates, we see increasing rents. In Avondale alone, we're in the process of building 5,000 new single-family units and another 3,000 multifamily units. And you'll see that happen over the next 5 years. So a huge influx of housing, but it still doesn't meet the demand of what we're trying to accomplish. And when I talk about the West Valley mayors, I talk about not only them, but the experts in the field, which are you. And how do we work together? How do we do it as a region to kind of address some of these issues? And honestly, and I think MAG is the perfect organization to kind of be a part of this commitment. I see the talent that's at MAG every day. We're working on Prop 400E, and that's been the majority of my focus, but we also focus on homelessness and economic development and other things that impact the residents who live in our county. I look forward to kind of seeing what comes out of this meeting today. I would also ask you that, we all sit back and listen and learn, and most importantly, kind of share the experiences that brought us to this meeting today. What drove you to be a part of this webinar? What drove you to take an effort in providing stable housing for so many members of our community? The Arizona Community Foundation works with communities just like Avondale to achieve this goal. They have convened a number of leaders throughout their Affordable Housing Collaborative funded by Chase. They're here to speak with us today, and Sarah Ligori, Senior Director of Impact, is with us. Sarah, thank you so much for being part of this and for taking the lead on this.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. And I think you hit on a lot of important things of how impactful this is to our own family and friends and people we know and we care about are living this day to day and what that looks like for our future. But I'll take the time right now to thank you all, say good morning. My name is Sarah Ligori. I oversee the Arizona Community Foundation's Impact Lending Funds. And this webinar right now is an effort by the Affordable Housing Collaborative, which is comprised of 40+ members of incredible organizations that are focused on reshaping the housing landscape in our state. The collaborative is being funded by JP Morgan Chase and APS, and it's staffed by the Arizona Community Foundation. So I'll give you a little history. 10 years ago, ACF diverged from traditional charitable grant making to an innovative new way of transforming capital through impact investing. And this has been an example of philanthropy meeting the moment by acting like a community lender. The foundation committed to providing funds that become critical to enable components in projects' capital stacks. With these funds, previously infeasible projects have been given the potential to pencil out, specifically in the low margin affordable housing developer context. So I am thrilled to announce and let you all know that we now have 2 loan funds specific to affordable housing pre-development funding. The first provides nonprofit developers with 0% pre-development loans for projects with LIHTC funding. And our new JP Morgan Chase Fund that's been rebranded the Greater Phoenix Collaborative Affordable Housing Fund, it's a mouthful, will provide pre-development loans for the preservation and production of units to nonprofit organizations, as well as grants towards capacity building. So I thank you all for being here at the first in a series of quarterly webinars. We hope that you will join us for the next ones. Each webinar has been specifically developed to focus in on relevant topics to help educate and innovate, such as partnerships among developers and local governments, braided funding, and toolkits that will be available as resources. I'd like to also thank our other partners who helped make this webinar series possible: the Arizona Housing Coalition, the Arizona State University's Knowledge Exchange for Resilience, and Morrison Institute on Public Policy, the Garcia Family Foundation, JP Morgan Chase, APS, Maricopa Association of Governments, the Urban Land Institute, and Vitalist Health Foundation. An additional special thanks to Vitalist for creating the Promising Housing Practices report, which will be the foundation for today's webinar. So joining us now is Vitalist President and CEO, Suzanne Feaster. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And this report has been a labor of love. It is now available, and it really, what we wanted to do is spark innovation. We call our reports the Spark Reports, and we really, in this publication, we did an inventory of some of the best practices and innovative practices that are in place in Arizona. We talk about some model ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. We have some couple great examples of co-location. So think about a library and with housing, community center with housing. So co-location, housing on school properties as an idea. There's creative building technologies that are highlighted in this report. The community, we have 2 community land trusts in Arizona that are working on affordable housing. We talk about the container craze. There's a lot of building with new technologies that is really starting to catch hold. Mixed use development, even to faith-based community development corporations. So everybody is engaged and interested in this level and providing what we would call workforce/attainable housing, because there is such an incredible need. So the idea was to stimulate conversation, to really dig deep, which is what we will do on a number of these issues in our breakout sessions, and really talk about what needs to happen rather than kind of a blunt instrument of legislation. We'd like to engage the cities to talk about how can you build on some of the models that are going on in Arizona and take advantage of the lessons that have been learned in these promising practices. So our goal with this report is really to engage and just get more information and stimulate ideas and creative thinking. There will also be, following this webinar, you can get information from the ACF MAG Tribal Housing webinar series if you're interested in that. And there will be other webinars talking about funding, looking at model ordinances, really digging deep as to how these promising practices could be implemented. So think of this as your start of the journey, or if you're part of this, to really help mentor others that are interested and willing to help. And I think the important thing that we talk about, particularly at Vitalist Health Foundation, is housing with supportive services is what will build community well-being. It's not just housing. It is housing with those collaborative services and support services that will help some of our most fragile populations succeed. So let me turn it over to Councilman Mark Stewart of Chandler, who is the chair of the MAG Human Services Community Initiatives Committee. So Councilman Stewart.
Councilmember, you're on mute. Would you like to unmute?
The one thing, so we're practicing lip reading this morning. But Suzanne, thank you so much for that and for your exceptional leadership in pioneering the work highlighting the connection between housing and health. It's clear that affordable housing plays a crucial role in maintaining good health and well-being, and Suzanne's efforts have been instrumental in spreading this message. So I'd also like to thank her for creating the report that forms the basis of today's webinar, Promising Housing Practices. This resource is an invaluable tool that offers her practical ideas, meaningful connections, and most importantly, hope that progress can be made in addressing the affordable housing crisis. As a Chandler City Council member, I've seen firsthand the impact that a lack of housing can have on a community. And this issue is not limited to my hometown or the state of Arizona, but it is a nationwide problem affecting countless individuals and families. But I'm heartened by the dedication of my fellow elected officials on the MAG Human Services Community Initiatives Committee. They are committed to serving our region's residents and finding a new and innovative solution to fixing these challenges. So today we're here to celebrate our successes and learn from others. And we have some amazing speakers lined up, including our keynote speaker, Mike Kingzella, CEO for Up for Growth, a national organization dedicated to solving the housing shortage and affordability crisis. With over 2 decades of experience in the housing policy, community development, and urban planning, I'm sure he will have some insightful remarks to share with us. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Mike Kingzella. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council Member Stewart. I appreciate your insights and your introduction. And I'd like to thank both Amy and Suzanne for the opportunity to engage with each of you on this call around the work that the collaborative has been engaged with across Arizona, in particularly communities across the Maricopa County region. So I believe that we have a slideshow pulled up. Everyone should see it, although I see myself. Amy,
It was up, Craig. Can you please bring the PowerPoint back up? I saw it for a moment. Thank you, Craig.
terrific. And just quick housekeeping, Amy, is there a way that I can control the slides or?
If you just tell him next slide, please, he can forward that for you.
Okay, great. Well, before we advance to the next slide, I'll just share a bit about our organization, Up for Growth. We are a national 501c3 nonprofit cross-sector member network focused exclusively on addressing America's severe shortage of homes. The gap between the housing that we need and the housing that we have has grown, no matter if you live in an urban community, a rural community, or anywhere in between. In fact, as we'll share as we present some of our recent research this morning, this gap has grown by more than double in the 7-year period from 2012 to 2019. So the crisis is worsening, and it's affecting more and more communities every year. Next slide, please. From an Arizona perspective, I just want to dive right into sort of the local impacts and the challenges that the state's facing. The broad context is that the United States has fallen 3.8 million homes short of meeting housing needs over the past 7 years, from 2012 to present. And in Arizona, that gap is in the top 10 in the nation, with a deficit totaling over 122,000 homes. What's driving that? We're not building enough housing to keep pace with population growth and household formation, and shifts in housing need over time. In fact, over the past decade, based on data from census, Arizona has only produced 1 new home for every 2.3 net new jobs created, and again from 2010 to 2020. So from a growth of deficit perspective, while Arizona is not in the top 5 in the nation, it is number 2 in the nation in terms of the rate of the increase of that deficit, growing by 14 times from 2012 to 2019. Again, the second fastest increase in housing underproduction at the state level across the United States. Next slide, please. From a national perspective, Arizona, of course, is not alone. Severe underproduction has driven many of the harms that we heard about from Councilmember Stewart and Mayor Weiss in terms of folks being priced out, particularly from high opportunity neighborhoods, places that are rich with jobs and transportation and infrastructure in particular. A deficit of homes is a root cause behind the rapid increase in prices, the increase in folks experiencing cost burdening, paying more than 30% of their gross paycheck on rent. Of course, housing instability and the increases in visible homelessness is a direct outcome of this deficit of homes. And all of these pressures are creating urgency on the part of policymakers and civic advocates to address the challenge. So really, Arizona is in this path of increasing unaffordability, housing instability. In many ways, California and other states that have been housing constrained for decades are beginning to export their crisis to places like Arizona and throughout the southeastern United States. Next slide, please. And again, this trend line is consistently increasing no matter where you look across the United States. Again, in 2012, our research found that the nation had only fallen 1.6 million homes short of meeting housing needs. Still a severe deficit, but less than half of what we find today at 3.8 million. Next slide, please. And what are some of the costs of this increasing deficit underproduction facing communities around the country? Of course, renter households are experiencing the brunt of these impacts by having many of their residents experiencing many renter households experiencing cost burdening. As this map shows, not only is there not a single state in the US that doesn't at least have one county where more than 50% of renter households are meeting the definition of cost burdened, but we can see the correlation to the previous map in terms of the states that are experiencing the greatest deficits, having the greatest number of households and communities affected by cost burdening and increasing housing instability. And the next slide really gets at the home ownership question. And affordability for many years now has certainly been at the top of the housing policy conversation. But as it becomes more evident across the country that young folks are increasingly less able to get into home ownership at the age that their parents did and prior generations, we see through our research that all you need to know about the access to home ownership, the access to starter homes, is the extent to which there's enough housing in the community, right? That shouldn't be certainly not an earth-shattering insight, but the data makes it very clear that the higher the underproduction severity, which is to say the percentage of missing homes relative to total inventory, there is a very strong correlation with the rate at which home prices are ticking up over time, and that access to entry-level starter homes is diminishing. So we see in this data, not only is there a cost for renters, but more broadly, housing stability and home ownership opportunities for communities across the country, of course, including Arizona. Next slide, please. So what do we, this really gets at, what can communities do about increasing underproduction and deteriorating affordability and availability of homes. And this is where I think the promising housing practices and the research out of this effort and out of Vitalist Health Foundation is really exciting, right? Which is to say that there are a lot of solutions that local governments and local leaders can move to not only tackle a deficit of homes, but really a mismatch of housing opportunities in the places where people are looking for housing opportunities the most and the product types to meet community needs. So in our report, Housing Under Production in the US, we really sort of look at ways that local governments, the policymakers can begin to tackle this issue, not only moving the needle when it comes to creating more housing abundance, but also moving the needle when it comes to questions around how do we increase economic dynamism? How do we make it so more of the workforce can afford to live near their jobs? How can we make it so that we're able to create more fiscal revenues and economic opportunity, both for residents of communities, but also local government. And we really call this policy framework a better foundation. Recognizing that the status quo is unsustainable, we call in our report the status quo a more of the same approach, which is really perpetuating existing development patterns and development distribution across geographies. Instead, we lay out a framework which we call a better foundation, a highly customizable policy framework that enables policymakers and civic advocates to layer key data sets together to pinpoint the places where housing can be produced to generate the best economic, fiscal, and socially beneficial outcomes for their residents and communities. So this framework really rests on what we call an opportunity mapping approach, which is really understanding the drivers of opportunity for folks and how can we create better access to opportunity by allowing and enabling more housing across the range of affordability levels for a community. And this really looks at, where are the neighborhoods that generate the best sort of economic mobility outcomes? Where are the places rich in infrastructure and transportation and amenities that more housing can be added in order to create better access to these opportunity deriving assets? And where are the places that there are lots of jobs, but not necessarily corresponding housing due to outmoded or outdated zoning and land use policies? And so this is really the framework that we first look at to understand from a policy perspective, where do we want to intentionally focus on breaking down artificial impediments to the types of housing that communities really need and want. Next slide, please. The second aspect of a better foundation is really understanding local context, understanding existing infrastructure capacity, and understanding how communities can feather in, gently increase housing as opposed to dramatic shifts from single family neighborhoods to high-rise towers. We really look at what exists today and how through some incremental development principles can policymakers amend zoning and land use policies to create more housing opportunity, again, in the right places with product types that meet contemporary housing needs on the considering both demographic shifts and consumer preferences. So we really step through, and our report goes into much further detail here. If an existing community contains, let's say, low density, single detached, maybe there are opportunities to introduce duplexes and triplexes and casitas or backyard cottages. If, on the other hand, we're looking at an underutilized commercial corridor, there might be very real opportunities to take advantage of that significant transportation capacity and introduce medium density communities. Really, this is about a smarter use of land and a smarter use of leverage of infrastructure in order to deliver housing, again, the types that folks are in pursuit of, and that creates better connectivity to jobs and amenities and other community resources. Next slide, please. So really, what does this all mean, right? What does it mean if policies change to accommodate a different spectrum of housing opportunities? We, in our report, talk quite a bit about the affordability benefits of this incremental approach by allowing smaller scale housing typologies like duplexes, for example, versus the more typical standardly produced 2,000, 3,000 square foot single detached home, by allowing a bit higher density in these more commercial in commercial intensive land areas across cities, the average cost of building a typical unit under this approach turns out to be about 11% less than more of the same. And this results in significantly more affordable homes, getting at that goal of creating more first-time home ownership opportunity and more attainable rent levels. So it costs less to build, and these units can be accessed less expensively on the part of communities. Counterintuitively, what our research found is, despite the fact that overall we're looking at a total economic output which is lower than the status quo, a better foundation generates higher gross domestic product, personal income, and personal income tax outcomes. We're actually creating more economic activity through the supply chain under a better foundation versus more of the same. And the big driver of this is, again, using that infrastructure in a wiser way, concentrating more homes around infrastructure that already exists, as opposed to the status quo, where often communities are attempting to manage affordability by building out, and that building out requires additional new infrastructure investment, which of course has a heavy economic burden, particularly over a 30-year time horizon. So the upshot here is there's a new way to build more homes, more affordable homes writ large, right? Not necessarily capital A affordable housing, although that is a significant piece of a better foundation, but even market rate housing, for sale homeownership opportunities incrementally less expensive than what is being built today. And at the same time, that generates better economic outcomes, both from a municipal and fiscal revenue perspective and from a community and household perspective. Next slide, please. You know, there's a lot more to unpack here around quality of life and reducing traffic congestion, which I'm happy to address if there is time for Q&A. I would just end with, I've laid out the problem, which is the nation is facing a severe shortage of homes, and a framework for solutions. And what's critical for this group to understand is that there are a number of both local and statewide solutions that we're seeing in places from Montana to Virginia to North Carolina that really get at how local policymakers can move the needle on creating more housing that better matches community needs and achieves other public policy goals, whether we're talking about the business environment and economic dynamism, economic policy, or quality of life. Just a couple of quick examples to get folks' wheels turning. From a statewide perspective, we've worked with a number of stakeholders in Washington State around new statewide resources to support locally driven efforts to modernize zoning and to engage in community outreach in order to build support and co-create better policies to inform housing production on the ground. That state created a $5 million fund through its Department of Commerce to award grants to local governments to take on these initiatives. And we've seen from Redmond, the home of Microsoft, down to Tacoma City, south end of the Puget Sound region, modernizing their zoning, allowing gentle density, even getting at transit-oriented development. Again, local solutions supported by statewide resources, we think is a really smart way to help catalyze policy reform in an environment where there's a lot of competing demands on scarce municipal resources. Another example that I would call out are efforts that we've seen really move forward productively in places like North Carolina around transit-oriented development and density bonuses, and in creating more certainty for builders in the private sector to both deliver more homes writ large, but communities even with mixed income by providing incentive bonuses around development rights, and specifically density near transit and the relief of off-street parking requirements for those communities. And so again, locally led policy initiatives, for example, in the city of Charlotte, has catalyzed significantly better outcomes with respect to access to transportation, which of course makes these types of systems more efficient, more fiscally sustainable, and creates the benefit for residents of these communities to lower their overall cost of living by being able to get around without relying exclusively on the use of a car, which can be a major household expense, particularly for low-income households. So those are a couple of policy categories that we are seeing play out in communities around the country, and hopefully a good way to get the ball rolling when it comes to solutions possible in communities across Arizona. So I will stop there. I'll just end with, we would love to engage with anyone on this call that's interested in plugging in and learning more. Our website is up on the screen. And we would be honored to be a resource to any and all of you as you continue your work on championing affordable housing and housing affordability across the state of Arizona. So I'll stop there. And Amy, I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but happy to be a resource in part of the conversation today.
Mike, thanks so much. Really appreciate all of your words and sharing your data, your perspective. That was just fantastic. So thank you so much. Unfortunately, we do not have time for questions. If anyone does have questions for Mike, though, if you'd like to put them in the chat, we'd be happy to follow up. At this point now, Craig will be sharing the options, and for the breakout sessions this afternoon, there will be 4. You'll have the opportunity to select your session and to be able to go into that. We'll be in the workshops until 11:15, so just 45 minutes. You have a great array of speakers for each of the workshops. And so please do go in, ask questions, have that dialogue. Each of the speakers will present just briefly, and then the rest of the time will be devoted to that dialogue with you. So Craig, if we can please bring up the workshop options. Actually, if you click on breakout rooms at the bottom of your screen, you can you'll bring up the accessory dwelling, co-location, creative building techniques, and public policy changes. I think, Craig, can you jump in, please, if they just click on that?
Yep, I'm about to open the rooms. But it will start moving the host into those rooms, including yourself. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I was afraid to click and then leave the plenary session.
All right, I'll go ahead and open the rooms.
Here at 11:15, our closing plenary will run from 11:15 to 11:30. We'll be talking about next steps, taking a quick live poll, and then Suzanne will be offering some final comments and to close out the webinar. So please do join us in these breakout sessions. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you back here at 11:15. Thank you, everybody. Hello, everyone. Great to have you back. It's very, very good to see everyone. Thank you for engaging in the breakout sessions. Thank you for coming back to the plenary session. The purpose of this session will last about 15 minutes or so, is to start to really unpack what was discussed. I would love to hear about any key takeaways, and then we'll have some quick live polling questions just so we can gather as much information from you as possible. The breadth of talent and expertise that we have among the participants of this webinar is just really impressive. And so we want to be able to glean some additional information from you before we leave today. But really quickly, if anyone would care to unmute, raise their hand, enter into the chat. Were there any key takeaways? Was there anything that really impressed you from the workshops? Anything that's still kind of lingering in your mind as we come back into this closing plenary? Anything that you'd like to share? Gabe?
Hey, this is Gabe. Yeah, so I'm a little bit biased. I was leading the group with both Zenny Homes and Viva Blocks, which are both manufactured and container homes. But the discussion around local ordinances that could start with ADUs and the adaptability of manufactured pre-built homes and the way they could be used not only in multifamily levels, but also single detached offsite, and the mixed possibility there, even with the containers that could be used in different applications, the flexibility there. We had some great conversations about the sustainability of these products and how well they're going to hold up for the long term and the multiple uses. So we had a really good conversation around that.
Excellent. Thank you, Gabe. Sounds like a great session, biased or not. Any other comments anyone would like to share from the breakout sessions?
I would. This is Darlene.
Yes, please, Darlene.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Gabe had just shared about modules, containers, just looking at different ways that we can provide affordable housing. But I was surprised in the ADU breakout that the majority of those that were built in Tucson were actually site built. And they found that they could do that cheaper than the module. However, the modules now are coming up and they're becoming a little more sophisticated. And I think we're starting to learn more about how we can use modules as ADUs. But I thought it was very interesting that the majority of those that have been built in the Tucson community, they've had 61 applications, 24 have been approved and 35 are in the hopper. So they're just kind of breaking ground in this area. So I think it's something that we should pay attention to, look at some of the ordinance that they've adopted that I think can be adopted in other communities.
Excellent. Thank you, Darlene. Fantastic. A lot of really creative, good work underway throughout the state. Any other thoughts? Speaking from the session that I was in, fantastic to hear about the great work that's underway through the city of Flagstaff and Habitat for Humanity. Just the thought that you can get into a home for $1,000 down, that's it. And then you can pay into it for years and years. And then when you want to move on to a different home, you actually get thousands of dollars back, $10,000, $30,000, $50,000, depending on how long you've lived in that home. When I was back in single years and years ago and in social work, my first home I bought through a first-time homebuyers program, and I was able to buy it with $1,200 down. And today I'm raising my family and I've got a different house, but I'm not sure that I would be where I am right now were it not for that first-time homebuyers program so many years ago. So I can personally attest to the importance of that and just to the impact that it can really have. Being in social work at the time, money was tough to come by, and being able to get into my own home just meant the world to me. So we have some quick live polling questions for you. Craig, are you able to launch that for us, please? Just wanting to ask some questions then about to get your biggest takeaway. If you'd care to go ahead and answer into that, that would be fantastic. Craig, can you talk us through how folks enter the poll? Do they just click on the poll icon down at the bottom of the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
And that poll should be showing to everybody right now.
Perfect. Thank you. It is showing. I'm not sure how to type our answer into it though.
It should. Okay, let me. Oh, I've got one answer. There we go.
Okay.
I'm starting to see people coming in now.
They're coming. Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent. Are we able to show the answers, Craig?
Yes,
I still don't know how to get in.
I know. You and me both, Suzanne.
Okay, if you click on the poll option at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you should see a poll button.
I think if you're a co-host, you might not be able to answer.
Okay. That's okay. So
Okay.
for the rest of you who are not co-hosts.
Did you want me to change some of the permissions, Amy? So
No,
everybody
that's
can.
okay, Greg.
Okay.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure who was
I
speaking.
have to say though, that does make me feel better. I was feeling a little silly. I'm like, I don't know how to answer my own live poll. So appreciate it. Okay. We've got 11 responses on that. Do you want to show the answers, Craig, if that's okay? And then we can go to the next question.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, results. Okay. What are we doing here? Hold on. We haven't, this is the first time we've done a long answer one, so I may have to share a different screen here. Give me
I
a
know.
second.
That's okay.
All right, give me a second. I have to share my actual web browser now.
You're innovating on the fly.
Yes, we
So
are.
the next question, so that you can start thinking about it, is what additional topics or trainings would you like to see in the future? So keeping in mind that we're really looking at how do we build capacity, and would love to hear from you how we might be able to do that. So looking about biggest takeaways, importance of government participation, yes. Zoning changes, creating community land trusts, hearing from speakers across the state, promising practices. Breakout on co-location was really practical. There is hope for additional affordable housing options. I think that's probably the biggest message, is that there is hope. There are lots of really good things going on. Really exciting. Read the promising practices report. Yes, it's very well done. Violet did an amazing job on that. Okay, a valid comment about seeing people who are directly impacted by housing insecurity. A great message, and definitely something that we can address in the next training. So I appreciate that feedback as well. Existing good pilots, creative solutions, great resources. Love learning about the Habitat for Humanity Starter Home Project. So excellent. Craig, thank you to all those who answered. Craig, can you please put the second question?
Yep, give me 1 second, just switching to the next one.
And so that question again for folks is, what ideas or feedback do you have for future training sessions? We'd love to get those ideas from you. Again, we are looking at having some additional sessions on funding, how to braid funding, because these projects need a variety of different funding sources. We'll have one on toolkits. Arizona Housing Coalition has a fantastic toolkit. They'll be updating it this summer. That's underway. So really excited to share their toolkit and others that exist. And then we have another one planned on how to help develop really good partnerships among the developers and local and tribal governments. So those are some of the ideas that we've heard so far, but we're really eager for any additional questions that you might have. And we have a couple answers coming in now, which is great.
And if for whatever reason you're struggling with the poll, just put it in the chat and we'll capture it that way too.
Great point. Thank you, Suzanne. Really good. Okay. Okay, can we please go ahead and show the answers to that? We have 9 in so far, which
Yep.
is a great sampling.
All right, give me 1 second. Share results. Okay, give me a second. I did not update my Zoom screen.
Excellent. Appreciate everyone's patience with this. I know it just hopefully seems like a few seconds, but I can guarantee for Craig, it feels like about 10, 15 minutes as he's working feverishly.
All right, give me a second. I got to jump between screens. Give me a second.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. Really appreciate all of your efforts today.
My pleasure. All right, you should be seeing the responses now.
Okay. Really enjoyed the breakout sessions. Great. Myths and stereotypes of starter housing. Yes, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. I'm getting more information about funding intersections. Definitely. We definitely have that on deck for our funding webinar. More time for Q&A from participants. Yes, it's always hard to cut that short. Community land trust, land use, business plans regarding operations. Definitely. Overcoming zoning barriers for tiny homes and infill. Small scale developer training. Thank you. Project finance. Definitely. Incorporating policies or designs for heat smart housing. Yes, it is hot here. Dry heat, even though it is. And case studies, best practices about project delivery, funding use, land use, and stigma. Thank you. Excellent, excellent points. Let me see. For future trainings, invite Feed Phoenix to present about the experiences they're having with our unhoused neighbors. Yes. Sorry, Mary Dickey, that you weren't able to copy and paste anything in the chat. If you care to contact me directly, I'd love to hear from you. Really appreciate you being here. And Zenny Homes, open house. Yes. March 27th from 4 to 6. Please contact Bob Worsley for more information, and we'd be happy to get that out to you. And Suzanne just posted a great chart that they just updated on funding sources, and encourage everyone to take a look at that. It's a great resource and really helps to give a really comprehensive, quick overview in terms of the different funding sources that are available for work like this. Really a critical component in the success of any project there. Let's see, we have just a few more moments. Craig, can you please post the next question? And again, if you're community land trust, is there a master list of such land trusts in Arizona? Hey, Jim, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. Does anyone have an answer to that? Is there a master list of community land trusts in Arizona?
There's really only 2 that are, and we highlighted both of them for housing development. There are others like the Central Arizona Land Trust in that is for conservation easements. But Gabe, am I right in describing that?
There's 2 of the we highlighted the 2 larger ones. I know there's one that was just highlighted in the comments, Southern, that has a couple of projects. Then Eric is working in Flagstaff. They have a city land trust as well. So there's a few real small ones, but we highlighted the larger ones, but we hope to expand that. And we hope to have that as one of the topics of discussion is the importance of community land trusts.
We
Excellent.
used to have a master list. There's one down in Patagonia that has units. Of course, Tempe, we're at about 50 units up here. And so we worked to create a list in the small coalition. Unfortunately, there just wasn't the spare time within the administrators of these small efforts to keep that going. If there's renewed interest, we'd be more than happy to participate.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. Excellent. Okay. And then the next question is, how will you use the information that you've heard today? And so if you'd just like to put that in the chat at this point, that might be a really quick way to be able to share that information. And Greg, we don't need to pin me. It's okay. I don't know about your screens, but I am huge right now on my screen.
I'm about to share the results on that. Give me 1 second.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Thank you. Okay. So how will you use the information that you heard today? Perfect. For grant proposal, perfect. Sharing with the leadership team, connecting with local habitat, setting the links, sharing with director and grant writer. Absolutely. Creating the plan, connecting with partners. Okay, I heard some concerns that maybe we don't fully understand the complex challenges of our housing insecure people. And definitely want to hear more about that. So if you care to contact us after this, love to continue this dialogue with you. So definitely want to make sure that we're incorporating all perspectives and that we're able to learn from each other. So very good. Excellent. Thank you, Craig. And then does anyone have any other questions, anything that you'd like to offer before we close out the session today?
Did you want the fourth question up, Amy? For the
You know,
poll?
if we have results for that, yes, that'd be fantastic. Otherwise, I'm not sure that we'll have enough time today.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to launch that poll right now.
Okay, nope, that's okay, Craig. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure.
All right. Excellent. Well, I would like to thank all of our speakers, all of our partners, all of our volunteers, and to thank all of you for coming. Suzanne, would you like to offer some closing comments?
Just please, please keep in touch. Please look for innovation, look for where you can collaborate, and let us know how we can be helpful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Craig, can you go to the last slide, please?
Yep, you should be seeing that right now.
Okay, with the report link, I thought maybe there's one more slide with the survey link.
No, that should be the slide that you're seeing.
Yep.
Right
Oh,
now.
here we go. I see it now. Thank
Okay.
you. So we will be sending out a survey. Please to offer your comments. We appreciate all of your perspectives, and we want to be able to use that information to build our future webinars. And please definitely go to the Valley's website. They have a wealth of great information there. So thank you everyone so much. It was great seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you.